Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vyāsadeva Gaura Aman Ki Jai. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Govinda Hare Krishna. Fixing the mind on Krishna. Devotional service is the medicine to cure the material disease. Hare Krishna. It's said that if the voice doesn't choke up and there aren't tears in the eyes when chanting the holy names of the Lord, then the heart is steel framed. I should pray for the day when we can offer those tears of love to the Lord. So, fixing the mind on Krishna means hearing about Krishna and Krishna's devotees and developing some attraction, that some love can awaken in the heart for the Lord and his devotees. So this is reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. It is the 4th Canto, Part 4. We're starting a new chapter. This is Chapter 30, the activities of the Prachetas. So this text dates well before 5,000 years. And the scriptures, the great devotees, realized souls, and their conversations, and their realizations, and the activities and pastimes of the Lord. To help us get a clearer understanding of our position and to reawaken our consciousness of God, Krishna. It's not something new. Krishna is within the heart of everyone. He's known differently in different cultures according to his different pastimes and activities. But his most recent incarnations, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, around 500 years ago. And he's appearing to give what he's never given before. Pure love in the deepest mood of separation. So, this is giving some of the background. These pastimes and these activities were taking place thousands of years ago. It's setting the stage for the appearance of the Lord as Sri Krishna Chaitanya. So this is the Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Right, so there's a conversation taking place. Krishna incarnated 5,000 years ago also as Krishna and exhibited his pastimes as Krishna. And he's just left the planet, and Vidura is on pilgrimage and had no news that the Lord's pastimes on the planet had come to a close and that he had left, gone back to his eternal abode, spiritual sky. And so he's inquiring from Maitreya about Krishna consciousness. He's just found out that the Lord's incarnation, his pastimes have come to a close. So Vidura inquired from Maitreya, "O Brahmin, you formerly spoke about the sons of Prachinabharhi and informed me that they satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead by chanting a song composed by Lord Shiva. What did they achieve in this way?" Okay, so there's some explanation here. In the beginning, Maitreya Rishi narrated the activities of the sons of Prachinabharhi. These sons went beside a great lake, which was like an ocean, and fortunately finding Lord Shiva, they learned how to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by chanting the songs composed by Lord Shiva. Now, their father's attachment for fruitive activities was disapproved by Narada, who therefore kindly instructed Prachinabharhi by telling him the allegorical story of Puranjana. Now, Vidura again wanted to hear about Prachinabharhi's sons, and he was especially inquisitive to know what they achieved by satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here the words Siddhim Apu, or achieved perfection, are very important. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Manushyanam Sahasreshu Kaschidhyatati Siddhaye. Out of many, many millions of people, one may be interested in learning how to attain success in spiritual matters. The supreme success is mentioned in the Gita. Mamupecha punarjanma dukalayam ashashvatam napnuvanti mahatmana samsiddhim paramam gata. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. And what is that highest perfection? That is also explained in the verse. The highest perfection is to return home back to Godhead, so that one will not have to return to this material world, transmigrate from one body to another in the dream of material existence. By the grace of Lord Shiva, the Prachetas actually attained perfection and returned home back to Godhead after enjoying material facilities to the highest extent. Maitreya will now narrate that to Vidura. My dear Barhashpatya, what did the sons of King Barhishat, known as the Prachetas, obtain after meeting Lord Shiva, who is very dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the bestower of liberation? Certainly they were transferred to the spiritual world, but apart from that, what did they obtain within this material world, either in this life or in other lives? All types of material happiness are obtained in this life or in the next life, on this planet or on another. The living entity wanders within this material universe in so many species of life, so many planetary systems. The distress and happiness obtained during the span of life are called iha, and the distress and happiness obtained in the next life are called paratra. Actually, Lord Mahadev, Shiva, is one of the great demigods within this material world. Generally, his blessings bestowed on ordinary people mean material happiness. The predominating deity of this material world, Durga, is under the control of Lord Mahadev, Girisha. Thus, Lord Mahadev can offer anyone any kind of material happiness. Generally, people prefer to become devotees of Lord Girisha, Lord Shiva, to obtain material happiness. But the Prachetas met Lord Mahadev by providential arrangement. Lord Mahadev instructed them to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he personally offered a prayer. As stated in the previous verse, simply by chanting the prayers offered by Lord Shiva to Vishnu, the Prachetas were transferred to the spiritual world. Sometimes devotees desire to enjoy material happiness also. Therefore, by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the devotee is given a chance to enjoy the material world before his final entrance into the spiritual world. Sometimes a devotee is transferred to a heavenly planet, to Janaloka, Mahaloka, Tapaloka, Siddhaloka, and so on. However, a pure devotee never aspires for any kind of material happiness. A pure devotee is consequently transferred directly to Vaikuntha Loka, which is described here as Param. In this verse, Vidura asked Maitreya, the disciple of Brihaspati, about the different achievements of the Prachetas. So usually, people approach Lord Shiva because they want something material. And he's easily satisfied. And he gives the benedictions, material blessings. But the Prachetas were different. They didn't approach Lord Shiva to try to get something like that. They actually came upon where he was staying quite by accident. They were traveling, and they came across a very, very beautiful ashram. It was the abode of a place where Lord Shiva was meditating and staying. And they inquired from him in the right way about spiritual life. And he initiated them into the mantras that he himself says offers to the Lord. And in this way, they attain perfection of life. So they approach the pure devotee in the right way. They didn't ask for anything material. They asked for the path back home, back to Godhead. But it's explained here that even though they didn't ask for anything material, still they got to enjoy all material facilities while they were here. So it's not that the devotee necessarily ends up destitute because they surrender to Krishna, although that can happen too. For a devotee, they accept whatever it is. But it's not always the case. Sometimes the devotee is very opulent. And certainly the devotee has what they need to maintain. Text 3. The great sage Maitreya said, the sons of King Prachinabarhi, known as the Prachetas, underwent severe austerities within the sea water to carry out the order of their father. By chanting and repeating the mantras given by Lord Shiva, they were able to satisfy Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah, that's the little secret. It's an open secret that to approach the Lord, we approach through his devotee. So because the Prachetas had the mantra given to them by the devotee of the Lord, that was the way to approach. Sometimes people try to think they can approach God directly. It doesn't work like that. It's not that the Lord can't work through someone. We have Arjuna, the different associates. They're actually eternal associates of the Lord, and they have direct contact with the Lord. But for the vast majority of souls in the conditioned state, and the process or the procedure is to approach through the Lord's representative. So Prabhupada gives a purport here. One can offer prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead directly, but if one repeats the prayers offered by great devotees like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, or if one follows in the footsteps of great personalities, one can please the Supreme Personality of Godhead very easily. For instance, we sometimes chant this mantra of Brahma Samhita. Chintamani prakara satmasu kalpa vriksha lakshavriteshu surabhir abhipaliyantam Lakshmi sahasra satasam brahma sevyamanam govindam adipurusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor who was tending the cows, yielding all desires in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees. He's always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds and thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis. Because this prayer was offered by Lord Brahma, we follow him by reciting this prayer. That's the easiest way to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The pure devotee never attempts to reach the Supreme Lord directly. The most important way to worship the Lord is to go through the disciplic succession of devotees. The prayers offered by Lord Shiva to the Supreme Personality of Godhead were thus repeated by the Prachetas, who were thus very successful in pleasing the Supreme Lord. Here, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is described as Puranjana. According to Madhvacharya, the living entity is called Puranjana because he has become an inhabitant of this material world, and under the influence of the three modes of material nature, he is forced to live within it. The Supreme Personality of Godhead creates this material world, Pura, and he also enters within it. The Lord enters within the heart of the living entity and within the atom. Therefore, both the living entity and the Lord are called Puranjana. One Puranjana, the living entity, is subordinate to the Supreme Puranjana. Therefore, the duty of the subordinate Puranjana is to satisfy the Supreme Puranjana. That is devotional service. Lord Rudra, or Lord Shiva, is the original Acharya of the Vaishnava Sampradaya called the Rudra Sampradaya. Rudra Gitena indicates that under the disciplic succession of Lord Rudra, the Prachetas achieve spiritual success. Text 4. At the end of 10,000 years of severe austerities performed by the Prachetas, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to reward their austerities, appeared before them in his very pleasing form. This appealed to the Prachetas and satisfied the labor of their austerities. Performing 10,000 years of severe austerities does not seem a happy endeavor. Yet, the devotees, the serious students of spiritual life, undergo such austerities to attain the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. At that time, when the duration of life was very long, people could undergo severe austerities for thousands of years. It is said that Valmiki, the author of Ramayana, underwent meditational austerities for 60,000 years. The Supreme Personality of Godhead appreciated the austerities undergone by the Prachetas, and he finally appeared before them in a pleasing form. Thus, they all became satisfied and forgot the austerities they underwent. In the material world, if one is successful after hard labor, he is very pleased. Similarly, the devotee forgets all his labors and austerities as soon as he contacts the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although Dhruva Maharaj was only a 5-year-old boy, he underwent severe austerities by eating dry foliage, drinking only water, and taking no food. In this way, after 6 months, he was able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. When he saw the Lord, he forgot all his austerities and said, Swamin Kritatosmi, my dear Lord, I am very pleased. Of course, these austerities were performed in the Satya Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Treta Yuga, but not in the present age of Kali Yuga. In this Kali Yuga, one can attain the same results simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Because the people of this age are fallen, the Lord is kind enough to give them the easiest method. Simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, one can obtain the same results. However, as Lord Chaitanya points out, we're so unfortunate that we're not even attracted by the chanting of the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So even though it's been made super simple, no 10,000 years of austerities, no 60,000 years of austerities, simply chant Hare Krishna, and still there's no attraction for doing that. Distracted by temporary engagements for sense gratification. No taste for chanting, no tears in the eyes, no heart melting in ecstasy. Too busy doing other things. This is the fallen condition of the age, this age. It's very difficult time. But it is made simple. Chanting Hare Krishna. Text 5. Personality of Godhead, appearing on the shoulder of Garuda, seemed like a cloud resting on the summit of the mountain known as Meru. Transcendental body of the personality of Godhead was covered by attractive yellow garments. His neck was decorated with the jewel known as Kastubamani. The bodily effulgence of the Lord dissipated all the darkness of the universe. This is the form of the Lord that the Prachetas saw. Four-armed Vishnu form, seated on his winged carrier, Garuda, dressed in yellow garments, neck with the Kastuba jewel, and bodily effulgence of the Lord, dissipating the darkness of the entire universe. As stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Lord is just like the effulgent sun. Consequently, whenever the Supreme Personality of Godhead is present, there cannot be darkness or ignorance. Actually, this dark universe is illuminated by the sun, but the sun and moon simply reflect the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Lord. I am the illuminating energy of both the sun and the moon, Krishna says in the Gita. The conclusion is that the origin of all life is the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is also confirmed in Brahma Samhita. Being illuminated by the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is freed from all darkness. Text 6. The Lord's face was very beautiful, and his head was decorated with a shining helmet and golden ornaments. The helmet was dazzling and was very beautifully situated on his head. The Lord had 8 arms, which each held a particular weapon. The Lord was surrounded by demigods, great sages, and other associates. These were all engaged in his service. Garuda, the carrier of the Lord, glorified the Lord with Vedic hymns by flapping his wings. Garuda appeared to be inhabitant of the planet known as Kinnara Loka. Generally, the Vishnu form is manifested with 4 hands holding 4 objects: a conch shell, a disc, a club, and a lotus flower. However, here Lord Vishnu is described as possessing 8 arms with 8 kinds of weapons. According to Viraraghava Acharya, the conch shell and the lotus are also accepted as weapons. Since the Lord is the supreme controller, whatever is in his hand can be considered a weapon. 4 hands hold 4 kinds of weapons, and the extra 4 hands hold an arrow, a bow, a trident, and a snake. Sri Viraraghava Acharya describes the 8 weapons as Shankha, Chakra, Gada, Padma, Saranga, Sara, and so on. A king is always accompanied by his ministers, secretaries, commanders, and Lord Vishnu is also accompanied by his followers, the demigods, great sages, saints, and so on. He is never alone. Consequently, there is no question of the Lord's being impersonal. He is always himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and his associates are also persons. From the description given in this verse, Garuda appears to belong to the Kinnara planet. The inhabitants of the Kinnara planet have the same features as Garuda. Their bodily features are like those of a human being, but they have wings. The word Gita Kirti indicates that the inhabitants of Kinnara Loka are very expert in singing the glories of the Lord. In Brahma Samhita it is said, in each and every universe there are different types of planets, and each planet has distinctive features. On the strength of this verse, we can understand that in Kinnara Loka, the inhabitants can fly with their wings. There's also a planet known as Siddha Loka, where the inhabitants can fly without wings. Thus, each and every planet has some distinctive facility. That is the beauty of the varied creation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 7. Nice descriptions here of the form of the Lord here and his associates and entourage. Around the neck of the personality of Godhead hung a flower garland that reached to his knees. His 8 stout and elongated arms were decorated with that garland, which challenged the beauty of the goddess of fortune. With a merciful glance and a voice like thunder, the Lord addressed the sons of King Prachinabharisat, who were very much surrendered to him. The word Adya in this verse is very significant. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the origin even of Paramatma and Brahman. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Brahmano hi pratisthaham. The Absolute Truth begins not with the impersonal Brahman, but with the original personality of Godhead, Krishna. When Arjuna realized Krishna's greatness, he addressed him in this way: Param Brahma Param Dhamma Pavitram Paramam Bhavan Purisham Shashvatam Divyam Adidevam Majam Vibhum. You are the Supreme Brahman, the ultimate, supreme abode, and purifier, the Absolute Truth, eternal divine person. You are the primal God, transcendental and original, and you are the unborn and all-pervading beauty. The Brahmana Samhita also says, Nadir Adi Govinda Sarva Karana Karana. Supreme Lord is not caused by anything, but he is the cause of all causes. Vedanta Sutra says, Janmad Yasya Yata. The Absolute Truth is that from which everything emanates. The Absolute Truth is described as Adi Purusha. The Absolute Truth is therefore a person and is not impersonal. Text 8. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear sons of the King, I'm very much pleased by the friendly relationships among you. All of you are engaged in one occupation, devotional service. I'm so pleased with your mutual friendship that I wish you all good fortune. Now you may ask a benediction of me. Since the sons of King Prachinabharisat were all united in Krishna consciousness, the Lord was very pleased with them. Each and every one of the sons of King Prachinabharisat was an individual soul, but they were united in offering transcendental service to the Lord. The unity of the individual souls attempting to satisfy the Supreme Lord or rendering service to the Lord is real unity. In the material world, such unity is not possible. Even though people may officially unite, they all have different interests. In the United Nations, for instance, all the nations have their particular national ambitions. Consequently, they cannot be united. Disunity between individual souls is so strong within this material world that even in a society of Krishna consciousness, members sometimes appear disunited due to their having different opinions and leading toward material things. Actually, in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be two opinions. There's only one goal, to serve Krishna to one's best ability. If there is some disagreement over service, such disagreement is to be taken as spiritual. Those who are actually engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be disunited in any circumstance. This makes the Supreme Personality of Godhead very happy and willing to award all kinds of benediction to his devotees, as indicated in this verse. We can see that the Lord is immediately prepared to award all benedictions to the son of King Prachinabharisat. So they were united in devotional service to the Lord. And that pleased the Lord very much. They didn't lose their individual identities, but they worked together in a loving way to serve a mutual object, is to please Krishna. That's the mood in the spiritual world. Is Krishna is the center of all, of everything, and everyone is there to serve and please Krishna. But there are relationships amongst the residents of the spiritual world also. They relate to each other also in their service to Krishna. It's a spiritual social structure. The Lord continued, "Those who remember you every evening of every day will become friendly with their brothers, with all other living entities." Oh, how nice. Repeat that again. By meditating on these great devotees, these prachetas, and how they were working together so nicely in brotherly love, the Lord is saying, those who remember you every evening and every day will become friendly with their brothers and with all living entities. Text 10. Those who will offer me the prayers composed by Lord Shiva, both in the morning and in the evening, will be given benedictions by me. In this way, they can both fulfill their desires and attain good intelligence. So the prayers that are composed and offered to the Lord by his pure devotees are very, very potent. And Krishna is very much pleased by those prayers that are offered by his pure devotees. And by reciting those prayers, like the prachetas did, they didn't try to make their own prayers. They recited the prayers of Lord Shiva as he gave them to them. Then they also pleased the Lord. So good intelligence means going back home, back to Godhead. This is confirmed in the Gita. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam tadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. One who offers prayers to the Lord to fulfill his different desires must know that the highest perfectional fulfillment of desire is to go back home, back to Godhead. In this verse, it is indicated that those who remember the activities of the prachetas, the sons of King Prachinabharisat, will be delivered and blessed. So what to speak of the sons of King Prachinabharisat, who are directly connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead? This is the way of the parampara system. If we follow the acharyas, we attain the same benefit as our predecessors. If one follows the decisions of Arjuna, he should be considered to be directly hearing Bhagavad Gita from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just like Arjuna did. There is no difference between hearing Bhagavad Gita directly from the Supreme Lord and following a personality like Arjuna, who formerly heard Bhagavad Gita directly from the Lord. Sometimes foolish people argue that since Krishna isn't present at the moment, one cannot take direct instructions from him. Such foolish people do not know that there is no difference between directly hearing Bhagavad Gita and reading it. as long as one accepts Bhagavad Gita as it is, spoken by the Lord. However, if one wants to understand Bhagavad Gita by his imperfect interpretations, one cannot possibly understand the mysteries, even though one may be a great scholar according to mundane estimates. That's the parampara. Hearing from the pure devotee, and the hearer then becomes a pure devotee. And they speak the same thing as what they've heard. And then hearing from them is the same as hearing from the first pure devotee, or hearing directly from Krishna, because they don't change anything. And they become Krishna conscious and purified by that hearing. So then they become qualified to speak. And in that way, it's continued. The message of Godhead is continued through a chain of disciplic succession. Text 11. Actually, I was just reading, because in the Gita, Krishna explains that from time to time, the succession appears to be lost. It's not being transmitted purely. Something is entered in there, and so the message isn't coming purely. And then I was reading in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's a book about him, with his quotes from his writings, compiled quotes from his writings, that he explains that although the scriptures are pure, sometimes they're not handed down properly, and it can be misinterpreted, and things can be entered in that shouldn't be. And so it requires the presence of a pure representative of the Lord, and sometimes the Lord himself, but more often than not a pure representative. The Lord empowers someone. And so then they become the living Bhagavatam, or the living representative of the scriptures, to clarify what's actually meant, what's actually being said, because this tendency to misinterpret enters in. It happens. It's just what happens. So the Lord, to reestablish the principles of religion, to put it on the right path, what the actual goal is, someone empowered will come. And that's also disciplic succession. That's to reestablish the disciplic succession. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was in that position. The Vaishnava line had been corrupted, and he managed to reestablish, acting as Krishna's pure devotee. He reestablished the proper understanding, the actual goal. Devotional service. Not just a show of devotional service, but devotion from the heart. Transcendental devotional service. With a purified mind fixed on Krishna. Text 11. Because you have with pleasure accepted within your hearts the orders of your Father, and have executed those orders very faithfully, your attractive qualities will be celebrated all over the world. Since every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he has small independence. Sometimes unintelligent men ask why one is put into a miserable condition, even though everyone is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because of his minute independence, the living entity can obey or disobey the orders of the Supreme Lord. If he obeys the Supreme Lord's orders, he becomes happy. If he does not, he becomes unhappy. Therefore, the living entity creates his own happiness or unhappiness. The Supreme Lord does not enforce these on anyone. The Supreme Lord praised the Prachetas because they all faithfully obeyed the orders of their father. The Lord therefore blessed the sons of King Prachinabharisat because they obeyed their father's orders. You will have a nice son. You will be in no way, who will be in no way inferior to Lord Brahma. Consequently, he will be very famous all over the universe, and the sons and grandsons generated by him will fill the three worlds. As explained in the next verse, the Prachetas will marry the daughter of the great sage Canto. It is suggested that the son's name will be Vishruta, and that he will glorify both his father and mother because of his good character. In fact, he would be greater than Lord Brahma. The great politician Chanakya said that if there is a good tree within a garden or forest, its flowers will fill the forest with their fragrance. Similarly, a good son within a family makes the whole family famous all over the world. Krishna took birth in the family of the Yadus, and consequently the Yadu dynasty is famous all over the world. O sons of King Prachinabharisat, the heavenly society girl named Pramlocha kept the lotus-eyed daughter of Kandu in the care of the forest trees. Then she went back to the heavenly planet. This daughter was born by the coupling of the Apsara named Pramlocha with the sage Kandu. Whenever a great sage undergoes severe austerities for material power, the king of heaven, Indra, becomes very envious. All the demigods have responsible posts for the management of universal affairs and are very highly qualified with pious activities. Although they are ordinary living entities, they are able to attain responsible posts, like Brahma, Indra, Chandra, Varuna. As is the nature of this material world, the king of heaven, Indra, is very anxious if a great sage undergoes severe austerities. The whole material world is filled with such envy that everyone becomes afraid of his neighbors. Every businessman is afraid of his associates because this material world is the field of activities for all kinds of envious people who have come here to compete with the opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, Indra was very much afraid of the severe austerities performed by the great sage Kandu, and he sent Pramlocha to break his vows and austerities. A similar incident took place in the case of Vishwamitra. From other incidents in the Shastras, it appears that Indra has always been envious. When King Prithu was celebrating various sacrifices, outdoing Indra, Indra became very envious and he disturbed King Prithu's sacrifice. This has already been discussed in previous chapters. King Indra became successful in breaking the vow of the great sage Kandu, who became attracted by the beauty of the heavenly society girl, Pramlocha, and begot a female child. This child is described herein as lotus-eyed and very beautiful. Being thus successful in her mission, Pramlocha returned to the heavenly planets, leaving the newborn child to the care of the trees
Fortunately, the trees accepted the child and agreed to raise her. Thereafter, the child, who was left to the care of the trees, began to cry in hunger. At that time, the king of the forest, namely the king of the moon planet, out of compassion, placed his finger, which poured forth nectar, within the child's mouth. Thus the child was raised by the mercy of the king of the moon. I'm sure there's ways to understand this that shed light on the path of devotional service. It's not open to me to decipher some of this in terms of the ultimate goal of life. But I'm sure there's some explanations here from to see this from the Bhakti Tattva platform. How to understand this in terms of Bhakti Tattva, a devotional service. You'll have to wait till it can be revealed at a future date. Although the Apsara left her child to the care of the trees could not take care of the child properly. Therefore, the trees handed the child over to the king of the moon. Thus Chandra, king of the moon, put his finger within the mouth of the child to satisfy her hunger. Well, let's think about it a second here. She's going to be awarded to these great souls, the Prachetas. So this is how she's making an appearance. And she appears Indra distracts a great sage because he's envious. And he's distracting the great sage from his meditation and his austerities. And because of that distraction, this child appears. And she's left to the shelter of the trees. But they can't sustain her, can't give her food. I'm sure there's a way to understand who this child is in terms of Bhakti Tattva. So she's sustained by the king of the moon. The moon is very much connected to the growing things. The moonlight is what gives the juice of life to the vegetables, the vegetation. So the trees couldn't nourish her, but the moon did directly. Just as he nourishes the vegetation. Well, not exactly, but he supplies the juice of life to the trees. And so he went ahead and supplied nourishment to the child also, since she had been left to the care of the trees, which means she was left to the care the moon also. Well, we'll read on. Okay, text 15. Since all of you are very much obedient to my orders, I ask you to immediately marry that girl who is so well qualified with beauty and good qualities. According to the order of your father, create progeny through her. The Prachetas not only were great devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but were very obedient to the orders of their father. Therefore, the Lord asked them to marry the daughter of Pramlocha. Your brothers are all of the same nature, being devotees and obedient sons of your father. Similarly, that girl is also of the same type and is dedicated to all of you. Thus, both the girl and you, sons of Prachinabharisat, are on the same platform, being united on a common principle. According to Vedic principles, a woman cannot have many husbands, although a husband can have many wives. In special instances, however, it is found that a woman has more than one husband. Draupadi, for instance, was married to all of the 5 Pandava brothers. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead ordered all the sons of Prachinabharisat to marry the one girl born of the great sage Canto and Pramlocha. In special cases, a girl is allowed to marry more than one man, provided she is able to treat her husbands equally. This is not possible for an ordinary woman. Only one who is especially qualified can be allowed to marry more than one husband. In this age of Kali, to find such an equipoised woman is very difficult. Thus, according to scripture, in this age, a woman is forbidden to marry her husband's brother, and this system is still practiced in some of the hilly tracts of India. The Lord says, with the blessings of the Lord, all things are possible. The Lord especially blessed the girl to surrender equally to all her brothers. Occupational duty without difference of purpose is taught in Bhagavad Gita. Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. The word yoga means acting on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work binds one to this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain unattached and free from bondage. One may act according to his own occupational duty, just to satisfy Yagna-Purush, Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's called apritag dharma. Different limbs of the body may act in different ways, but the ultimate objective is to maintain the entire body. Similarly, if we work for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we will find that we satisfy everything. We should follow in the footsteps of the Prachetas, whose only aim was to satisfy the Supreme Lord. This is called apritag dharma. According to Bhagavad Gita, Sarvadharman parijajya mamekam saranam praja. Abandon all varieties of religion. Just surrender unto me. This is the advice of Lord Krishna. Our only aim should be to act in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of the Lord. This is oneness, or apritag dharma. Hmm. 17. The Lord, then blessed all the prachetas, saying, My dear princess, by my mercy, you can enjoy all the facilities of this world, as well as the heavenly world. Indeed, you can enjoy all of them without hindrance and with full strength for 1,000,000 celestial years. And that is quite a long time. I believe celestial years, in terms of the higher planetary systems, that one of their years, 6 months of ours equals one of theirs. So by our time, looking at not only 1,000,000 celestial years, but 1,000,000 times a whole nother figure. It's way more than 1,000,000 years measured in Earth time. The duration of life prescribed for the prachetas by the Supreme Personality of Godhead is calculated by the time measurements of higher planetary systems. Our 6 Earth months are said to equal 12 hours. Oh, wow. 12 hours in the higher planetary system. 30 days equal 1 month. 12 months equal 1 year. In this way, for 1,000,000 years, according to the calculations of the higher planetary system, the prachetas were allowed to enjoy all kinds of material facilities. So 6 months equals 12 hours on the higher planets. It's a long time. Although prachetas were allowed to enjoy all kinds of material facilities, although this lifespan was so long, the prachetas were given full bodily strength by the grace of the Lord. In the material world, if one wants to live for many years, he must endure the difficulties of old age, invalidity, and many other miserable conditions. The prachetas, however, were given full bodily strength to enjoy material facilities. This special facility was given to the prachetas so that they could continue rendering full devotional service. And this will be explained in the following verse. Thereafter you will develop unadulterated devotional service unto me and be freed from all material contamination. At that time, being completely unattached to material enjoyment in the so-called heavenly planets as well as in the hellish planets, you return home, back to Godhead. By the grace of the Lord, the prachetas were given special facilities. Although they could live millions of years to enjoy material facilities, they still would not be deviated from the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Being thus fully engaged, the prachetas would be completely freed from all material attachment. Material attachment is very strong. During one lifetime, a materialist engages in acquiring land, money, friends, society, friendship, love, and so on. He wants to enjoy the heavenly planets after the annihilation of the body. If one is engaged in devotional service, however, he becomes unattached to all kinds of material enjoyment and suffering. In the material world, those who are elevated to the higher planetary systems are supposed to enjoy all material facilities, whereas those degraded to lower planetary systems are supposed to live in a hellish condition. A devotee, however, is transcendental to both heavenly and hellish conditions. According to Bhagavad Gita, devotee's position is described in this way. Mam chayo vyavacharina bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahmabhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. A A devotee is always situated on the Brahman platform. He has nothing to do with material happiness or distress. When one is strongly fixed in devotional service and free from all material attachment, uncontaminated by material modes of nature, he becomes fit to return home back to Godhead. Although by special blessing the prachetas would enjoy material facilities for millions of years, they would not be attached to them. Thus, at the end of their material enjoyment, they would be promoted to the spiritual world and return to Godhead. The word Pakva Gunasaya has special significance, for it means that by devotional service one is able to give up the influence of the three modes of material nature. As long as one is influenced by the modes of material nature, he cannot return to Godhead. It is clearly explained that all planets in the material world, beginning from Brahmaloka down to the hellish planets, are unfit places for a devotee. Padam padam yad vipadam natesham. A place where there is danger at every step is certainly not a comfortable place. The Lord therefore says in Bhagavad Gita, Abrahma bhavana loka punarvitano juna mamupecha tikanteya punarjanmana vidyate. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery, wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. Thus there is no profit, even if one is promoted to the highest planet in the material universe, Brahmaloka. However, if one is somehow or other promoted to the abode of the Lord, he never returns to the material world. If one is somehow or other promoted to the abode of the Lord. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhakta